Hi everybody, my name is Jim with Full Moon Adventure Club, and today we're going to be going over how to permanently install the Inergy Apex and the Inergy Kodiak into my RV permanently. These together have 180 amp hours of lithium power that I can now transfer to the RV with just the flip of a switch, which is awesome. And I have a video of these being used in the entire finished project in action. I'll put right after this video in case you came to this one first. This shows you how to do it. Now, before we get started with the installation process, I do have to do some disclaimer stuff. This is not a how-to video. This is just showing you the process that I took to do my installation. This is very complicated, and you need to be really competent with AC electrical systems in order to do this. And frankly, I'm not an electrician, and I don't want anybody to get hurt or damage gear or anything like that. So I don't recommend that you do this project, but this is what I did, and maybe that'll help give you some ideas on whether or not you want to get this permanently, professionally installed, or even tackle the process yourself if you're really competent with all those systems. Now, with the disclaimers out of the way, this is a really great project that I absolutely love because I just flick a switch and I can connect to shore power, or I can connect to the Apex, or I can connect to the Kodiak, and that runs the RV and charges my batteries completely silently without running the generator, which is amazing. So absolutely love this. They're not outside, exposed to the elements, exposed to theft, possible theft. So I really love this installation, and I'm gonna get right into all the diagrams and what you need and what I did and any mistakes that I made in just a second. If you do notice anything that I might have made a mistake on, or if I determine that there was something that I made a mistake on, I will put that down in the description below just to make sure that it's covered. So check the description below for any updates, and I think that about covers it. So with all that said, let's jump right into the installation process right now. Okay, so here's the diagram that I've put together for you guys. You can see our rotary switch right here in the middle, and that's basically gonna make sure that everything that needs to be connected is connected and everything else is disconnected when it needs to be. Now in position 0, we have all power off. And in position 1, we're going to have the generator and shore power, as seen here in brown, connected to the position 1 slot. Now the generator and the shore power both share the same wire, because on the RV the plug, the 30 amp plug is either plugged into shore power or you plug it into the generator connection box. So it's manually only ever connected to one or the other at the same time. So that can go on one switch right there. Now for position 2, we're going to have the Apex power coming into position 2 here. And then position 3 is going to be the Kodiak. I'll go to our position 3 on the switch. Now on the other side of the switch, we'll call that the bottom side of the switch, that basically connect all of these when they're in the right position. All of those will go down into the junction box. Every single one will have its own wire set, and they will all come together and be transformed into basically one wire that's going to go into our 30 amp breaker to power the RV right here. So all 3 of these wires are going to come together, be spliced into one that comes down here. And only one of them will ever be connected at a time because of the rotary switch. So in position 2, position 3, they'll all be separated in that way, and they all come together in the junction box and come down here. So I hope that makes sense for you. Position 0 is everything off, 1 is shore and generator power, position 2 is the Apex, position 3 is the Kodiak, and the other side of the switch, all 3 of those come into the junction box, and then one wire comes right here to our 30 amp breaker. So I'm using a 10 gauge AWG Romex rated for 30 amps. If you have a 50 amp service, you'll probably have to go with like a 6 gauge. Now that first wire coming into the junction box is going to be the one that goes into the 30 amp breaker inside of our fuse panel. And then it connects with the other 3 wires inside the junction box and runs up to the switch. So that's a 3 position switch right there. It has 0, 1, 2, and 3 positions. And on the top of that switch is going to be the Romex that goes to the 30 amp plug that's originally connected to the RV. That's going to connect to that. And then I purchased one, it's basically a replacement 30 amp plug for an RV, which is very long, and I just added a plug to the end of it. So that way I have 2 plugs on each end and then a whole lot of length. So we're going to cut that to whatever size we need, and then we will feed that into our closet and then attach it all to the switch. So this is what the entire layout looks like. and I kind of put it together outside the RV so that it's easier to install. So here's a side profile of the rotary switch itself, and the way these basically work is as you twist the knob up front, it's going to move a connection cylinder, a little connector, down to each one of these areas right here, connecting the entire circle around this plug. You know, basically think of this as a little cylinder, this is a little cylinder, this is a little cylinder, and even a little cylinder up here. So when the connector is here, the power is off. When it moves it down to this cylinder, it's on shore power. When it moves it down to this one, it's on Kodiak. And when it moves it to the last cylinder, it's on Apex. Now here you can see all of the neutrals are connected right here. This is basically like the top of the plug, and this would be the bottom. So these are the incoming wires. Over here, you can see these, this is for the Apex, this is for the Kodiak, and this is actually for the original shore power plug from the RV. So now I'm going to show you a different cross section so you have a better idea of what's going on. Okay, so here's another angle of the rotary switch. You would have your position knob here. Let's call this the top, and let's call this the bottom down here. On the top, you're going to have all of your incoming power sources. So you can see we kind of have our Apex right here, or the Kodiak, and then the other black wire is going to be the Apex located here. And then we have our original shore power from the RV cord. Up here, you have your hot and your neutral from all those incoming sources at the top. Now all of our outgoing power that we're going to be putting into the junction box is on the bottom of the switch, and you can see it's pretty much hot to hot on the same side right here on the cylinder, and on the other side you're going to have your neutral and your neutral on the same slot. So I hope that kind of makes sense for you, and that kind of clears things up on how this switch is actually wired. All of the grounds are actually going to be connected together because they can all share that common ground wire right there. So those are all just connected together. And here you can just see everything finally wired and ready to go inside. In the background we have our plugs installed and stuff. We'll get to that in a second. But this is the basic setup where I have all of these zip tied together, all the grounds connected, everything is nice and secure, and there are no frayed wires or anything like that, so we are good to go on the switch. As you can see here, all the grounds from all of the different wires, basically all the wires have to come in here, and all the grounds will be attached to each other inside of our junction box. And don't forget to ground the box itself, located right here. So all the grounds are attached, and now you can see I have the other wires just pointed up, and we're going to attach them here in just a minute. Make sure you leave yourself plenty of wiggle room for length on these wires, as you can just cut them down later. And these are of course all secured inside the box by tensioners to make sure these wires will never get pulled out. Here you can see the junction box after it's all completed. You basically have, you can tell these 3 Romex wires, and this is 10, so this is rated for 30 amps. All 3 of these Romex wires go up into our switch, and they all come in here and they're all connected into this wire right here that's going to run to our 30 amp breaker inside of my breaker box that will feed power to the RV. And of course, don't forget to attach your cover. So here we have a nice step down drill bit, so you can pretty much adjust it to any size, and I can make sure that my hole is exactly the right size for that wire that's going to be going in. So you find your place wherever you're going to be installing, and you're going to have to drill your wire so that you can run that wiring through. So once I've drilled the first hole, I'm going to go ahead and take my RV cord that's going to be going to the Apex, and I'm going to be running that through the hole. So we're going to go ahead and start feeding that down into the bottom cabinet where my fuse panel is. And once we have that all done, you can see that it's going to sit nicely and out of the way when we're done if we're not using it for the Apex. Now we're going to drill the second hole for the Kodiak cord here, and we're going to install that. And I did choose different plugs so that I never confuse which one goes to which unit. So those will both sit nicely out of the way if I don't have the Apex and the Kodiak in there, and I can use that storage space for something else, or you just pull them out and plug them in. Simple. Now you need to drill your hole for your switch, and it only needs to be as big as that rotary shaft is on the switch itself. Make sure that you have enough clearance and everything behind that hole to fit your 3-position switch. I actually installed everything outside of the RV, and it almost didn't fit up there because there was a brace underneath the closet that I didn't see. But luckily I did manage to get it up. Otherwise I would have had to run the wiring and then rewire the plug. So then you put the rotary shaft through there, and you're going to reattach the plug itself, the cover plate that holds it against the wall, which basically just had some threaded nuts and some bolts that go on the outside that tighten and hold it in place. Then you put on the vanity cover, the switch itself. Make sure you put the switch in the right position so that it's functioning correctly with 0 up top and 3 off to the side. Then we're going to put in the retaining screw for the switch and give it a test, and we're good to go. I actually didn't do the solar until about a week later, but basically the two 100-watt Lynx panels are connected together, and then they run into the vent for the refrigerator and into the cabinet. So right above the refrigerator is actually a vent up to the ceiling, and that's where I ran in my solar cable going to the two Lynx 100-watt panels. And if you look over here, you can see that it actually comes out of the wall there, runs along top, along this track, and I'm going to secure this up better as soon as I figure out what kind of fastener I want to use. And then that goes into the closet there, and I'm going to patch this hole up a little bit, make all this look good, maybe with some wire hiding track or something like that. It goes in behind the wall and all the way down behind the wall, past the switch, and into the Apex, which is located down below and in the back. So now I'm going to go ahead and kind of screw in the closet cabinet here that I replaced or had to remove, and then we'll replace the trim on that a little bit later. But for now, this is going to work just fine with some screws to hold everything into place, and the switch is functioning correctly. Now that we get to the electrical part of this going into the fuse box, you have the original 30 amp power cord that has the black wire, the green wire, and the white wire. The black is hot, the green is ground, and the white is neutral. So we need to disconnect those and pull them out. So once we've gotten the black hot or line disconnected from the 30 amp breaker, we're going to disconnect the neutral from the neutral bus and the ground from the grounding bus and go ahead and pull that out. So now basically what we have to do is run our main line coming from that junction box and run it into our fuse panel. So here you can see me inserting the Romex from the back, and the color coding is going to be the same. Black is going to be our hot or line, white is going to be our neutral, and the exposed wire is going to be our ground. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take our neutral and connect that to the neutral bus. Go ahead and get that guy in there and tighten that down. And then we're going to take our ground and attach that to the ground bus up top and tighten that down. And last but not least, we're going to take our hot line right here and connect that to the 30 amp breaker. Once we have all that completed, we're going to be good to go for our wiring inside the fuse panel, and you can put everything back together and reattach the panel. Now we're going to take the Inergy Apex, which I've decided to put in the back, and we're going to go ahead and plug that in, making sure that we have the right ones connected. I actually chose a different style of plug on purpose so that I'm going to know which one goes to which unit, the Apex or the Kodiak. So now we're going to put the Kodiak into place and plug it in as well. Once we have all that done, we can go ahead and kind of power on the system and check everything out. And about a week later, I'm going to go ahead and install the solar, but for now we can test the system. So then I labeled the switch. You can see there it says 0 is all power off, 1 is generator and shore power, 2 is Apex power, 3 is Kodiak power. That way if I have to walk anyone else through it or anything like that, I won't forget. And then I also cut a piece of wood with some bat boards, like a shelf, all the way around that, and stained the wood. I probably should have gone darker, but that way I can still use my closet. There's plenty of room for airflow for the Kodiak and the Apex underneath there, and I can still use it, as you see on the right, for my clothes and even stacking some heavy stuff like that socket set on top. Well, there you go, guys. It is a pretty complicated install, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it unless you really know what you're doing. And you need to be really careful out there with this installation. I've absolutely been loving it. It's working flawlessly so far. One thing that I will caution you against is I used little locking nuts for the electrical, some of the wiring, and they're just little flip nuts and they come down. And I believe the original version is called Wago connecting nuts, and these are some kind of knockoff. I didn't realize, but I had 2 wires come loose with those, so I wouldn't recommend them really. I would use a different method. I'm gonna have to go back in and probably change those out to something else. They're holding so far, but during the installation I had 2 come out, which is a no-go. So, you know, I'm gonna have to go in and replace those at some point, so don't use those. Other than that, everything's been working really well. And again, like I said, if I find anything that goes wrong or you notice anything, and you tell me about it, I'll put that in the description down below so we can make sure we have the most information possible. But that covers it. I absolutely love this project, and you should be able to put this down in a cargo area on your RV or something like that. And I think it'd be really cool, and that way they're not exposed to theft or the elements, and you can sleep better and actually use them as an integrated part of your RV and add that 90 amp hours of energy into your RV and still be able to disconnect it, use it for your laptops, computers, camping, your truck. You can take it out and move it around. It's still very, very portable. And like I said, they are being charged by the Lynx panels, 100-watt Lynx panels up on top. And those have been exposed to the elements for months. And I'm going to do a review video on those as well to see how they're holding up to the elements and everything else. So far, they're working great. If you are interested in picking up the Inergy Apex at all, I do have a link down below that will save you the most money possible, and that'll take you straight over to Inergy's website so you can check out more information, because these things are really cool and they've been working great. And I've been putting them both through the ringer, but the Kodiak is getting pretty old now, and I mean, I just beat them up and use them all the time, and they're working great. So very, very cool, and I'm glad that they're just a permanent install now, charged by solar, and then I can dump that power right into the RV when I need it. It's super cool. So please use my link to check these out, or my Amazon link for any of your purchases. You could also visit me on Patreon and contribute to the channel that way, so I can keep making these increasingly complicated videos for all of you to enjoy. My name is Jim with Full Moon Adventure Club, and until the next video, thanks so much for watching, and happy camping.